How's everybody doing tonight? Give me a one in the chat if you can hear me. Get my chat back up. Give me one in the chat. Yes, -1 in Indiana. Shout out to Justin Williams, HTX in the house. Hopefully your pipes is not freezing in Texas. I remember like 5 years ago, you had like an ice storm and people's pipes was freezing in their apartment and just running down. And because I know Texas ain't, got that infrastructure in there. Shout out to B2B for joining me. Abdul, thanks for joining me. GRC Mafia, thanks for the one. Yeah, it's freezing here. Like I said, it's -1. So I got my heat on high. Give me a second. I need to turn off my little space heater. I want to make sure I ain't getting any feedback with that. Then we get started. You know how we do it. If you got any questions or comments, put them in the chat. Whew, man. Oh, man. You see it? This 800-53. System service and acquisitions, one of my favorite families. Why is that? It's for third party. A lot of times we're going to get into it when you do acquisitions, you're doing RFPs, RFI, or just buying software. That's when you do your risk assessment, your security assessment, and your security questionnaire. So that's kind of one of my favorite ones. See, it took me an hour and a half to make it home in the snow in Atlanta. Be careful, man. Y'all know how to drive in the snow in Atlanta. Yeah, I saw it was snowing in Atlanta. A couple other YouTubers I know was showing it snowing in Atlanta, which is super rare, ain't it, B2B? Y'all don't get much snow. I don't think y'all get much snow. Once again, if y'all got anything, questions or statements on tech or cybersecurity, put them in the chat. I know a lot of people were looking at the inauguration. I didn't watch much of it, but kind of new things, new 2025, new issues, new opportunities. So once again, let's go ahead and hit it. And once again, if you got anything, questions or statements, put them in the chat. Tech or cybersecurity. It's gonna roll through these pretty quick. Once again, system service and acquisition. You see it right there, the SA almost walking it down with the 20 families of the NIST. So I actually been picking up a few things myself on here. Here's the sub families. We just gonna hit a few of those today. I probably try, if they're this big, I try to just do half of them. But you see on policies, procedures, allocation of resources, system development lifecycle, acquisition and process, system documentation, security, privacy, and engineering principles, external system services, developer configuration management, developer testing and evaluation, development process standards and tools, developer provided training, developer security, privacy, architecture, and design. I just thought that was a weird place for that, to be honest. Customized development of critical components, developer screening, supported system components, and specialization, right? So once again, I think I just did half of these, kind of hitting on the high points. But once again, one of the bigger security families. Once again, I like it because third-party assessments a lot of times starts with your acquisition of software, being buying servers, buying VMs, buying cloud partitions, buying software as a service, risk assessment, security assessment. Now, shout out to Dwight and Chris Whitlock. I'm sure they're sleeping in, but shout out to the privacy design. And they had that in there. SA 17, looking at that privacy architecture. All right. So when you're doing services, how do they handle privacy? And we're going to touch on a couple slides on that tonight. You got to be careful out there, B2B, that hour. Yeah, that does suck, man. I remember one time I left DOD when I was working on Indiana. It usually takes me 20 or 30 minutes. Man, it took me like an hour and a half. One of my homies, it took him an hour usually to drive because he's actually in another bigger location in there. It took him 3 hours to get home, man. So yeah, so you have to be careful with that. Hopefully that snow will quickly melt. So SA2, allocation of resource. Determine high-level information security and privacy requirements for the system. Determine, document, and allocate the resources required to protect the system. Establish a discrete line item for information security, privacy, and programming and budgeting documentation. Right. So once again, when you acquire software, you want to make sure you have the security and privacy requirements. Probably in the last 5 years, security and privacy was kind of wrapped up into one. Now we being super deliberate, and we want to make sure we have security and privacy requirements for the system. So that's kind of what I've been working on in 2024 and 2025. I do third-party assessments. Once again, I was doing security with the risk, right? So the next level of that will be privacy. So once again, determine, document, allocate the resources. The resources are people, money, all right? When you're doing federal work, they want to make sure you have a budget to do a federal system. They don't want to spin it up and you don't have the resources to actually do it. So that's why when you work for agencies, part of their budget is, once again, do you have the resources, the hours, and how much it's going to cost you? When I was at DOD, I think we spent like $700 million on a system one time. So, but it was like 500 developers across 5 different states. And so you want to make sure, once again, you have the money. And once again, documentation was real big. I think that's less of a factor now, but SA3, system development lifecycle. Acquire, develop, and manage the system using the agency system development lifecycle. Define and document, once again, information security and privacy roles and responsibilities. Identify individuals having information security and privacy roles and responsibilities. Integrate the organizational information security and privacy risk management process into the system development lifecycle activities. So a lot of times if you're developing software, or the new thing right now is what? Infrastructure is code. So if you building up infrastructure, developing code, what is your process? And once again, does that process handle security and privacy in there? Once again, GDPR is out there, CCPA. Virginia has some different privacy laws from a state perspective. New York DFR has some privacy stuff for New York financial agencies. So there's a number of privacy requirements and architectures out there now. We got to stay on top of those. Let's say for acquisition process, including the following requirements, description and criteria, security and privacy functional requirements, strengthen the mechanisms for those requirements, security, privacy, insurance requirements, controls needed to satisfy the security and privacy requirements. So, right, so those functional requirements, security requirements, privacy requirements, and what mechanism are you doing? Are you doing Raptor 7 scans? Are you doing Nexus scans? Are you doing AWS config scans? So what's your mechanism to make sure you know you're meeting those requirements? And once again, the acquisition process. So as you're acquiring software, acquiring services, acquiring infrastructure as code, are you covering those things and make sure you're doing the right things on those? What's up, Cam? Glad you could make it. Acquisition process. Once again, the security and privacy documentation, requirements for protecting the security and privacy documentation. Because a lot of times those documents has proprietary information of how you're doing encryption, login, Kerberos, right to know, right to delete, how are you handling those, how are you tagging those data fields, right? And if a bad guy got those, that'll make it easier for them to hack your system. Description of your system development life cycle and operate environments. Allocation of responsibilities or identification of parties responsible for, once again, information security, privacy, and the big one right there is supply chain risk management. We know Kaseya's has got everybody hacked, so and everybody's in the cloud and everybody's buying services for cloud vendors, but what's your risk management for those cloud vendors? Shout out to Snowflake, right? Snowflake got Ticketmaster hacked, right? Because they didn't do their. I appreciate that. Rubber meets the road. I appreciate that. Me and Big Cam used to work together, so shout out to him. So definitely in the game. Got to see ISP. I need to follow his lead. I appreciate it. Like and subscribe for real. I appreciate that. So once again, acquisition. We talking about acquiring software, doing your third party risk assessment, doing your security assessments when you acquire software, especially if you're doing federal work, RFI and RFPs. How do you do that, right? How do you go through your vendors, do those checks, do those requirements? Are you using STIG, CIS checks, schisms? But what are your requirements for? And you see it there, and we talked about it: security, privacy, and supply chain risk management. Right. So we know NIST 853 is out there, NIST CSF's out there, CIS is out there, CMMC's out there. There's a lot of ISO's getting a lot of love lately. I always thought that was a European thing, but that's getting a lot of love. So once again, there's a ton of compliances out there. You just got to pick one and make it happen. System documentation: obtain or develop administrator documentation for the system of services, secure configuration and installation of operation system or service, effective use of maintenance of, once again, the security and privacy functions, non-vulnerabilities regarding configuration and use of administrator or privileged functions. All right, so that should be in your system documentation. How are you handling it? Hopefully, privileged functions. You're using sudo if you're on Unix. You're using Windows 11. You can switch over to a sandbox area. So how are you having those privileged accounts? You shouldn't be using privileged accounts with your everyday, username. Like I used to be a DBA, I do my regular work on my username, but then if I needed to do DBA work, I could sudo over there and do that type of work, right? So if the bad guy ever got my regular account, he wouldn't probably know my sudo um, password or sudo, probably MFA in it. There's a couple ways to do it, so we want to make sure that locks down. And also on the system documentation, obtain, develop user documentation for your system. If you're doing custom development, right, you got to do custom documentation for your client. All right, security and privacy functions and how to effectively use those methods for user interactions with the system to protect privacy. User responsibility in maintaining security and privacy of system. Document attempts to obtain system or system service documentation. For some reason, if you couldn't get it, you should document how many times you try to get it. Right now, being your con your continuous monitoring, that will be a dashboard on there. Essay 8, once again, security engineering principles. Apply the following system security, privacy engineering principles and specifications: design, development, implementation, modification of system components, agency defined system security and privacy engineering principles. So the agency defined will be the IRS. That would be schisms if you're using FISMA, if you're doing DOD. The big one now is everybody wants you to kind of do some kind of zero trust architecture in there, along with your privacy. So those are some of the security principles they would be looking for. Yep, CMC 171. I need a blue team AI usage stream. Sorry, facts. I've been thinking about that. I need to get better with my AI, especially from a GRC perspective and compliance perspective. So external service systems, these will be our kind of our third parties, or even if they're different agencies internal to us, it's an external system. Require the providers of external systems comply with your organizational security and privacy requirements. Define and document organizational oversight and user roles and responsibilities regarding to your external system service. Employ the following process methods or techniques to monitor, control, compliance for your external service provider. So once again, if we're talking about third-party risk assessment, so Once again, how do you make sure they're complying with them? Everybody know I do a lot of IRS work, so that'll be schisms and Pub 1075. How do you know the vendor that you have assisting with you doing that work complies with that compliance, right? So you have to do a risk assessment, risk questionnaire, ask for spreadsheets to be filled out, which is part of the questionnaire. A lot of times they have a system security plan you can review for a mature organization, but once again, how do you make sure that external system service, once again, is complying with your organizational security and privacy requirements? Um, so once we get back on track, I'll start doing some more third-party assessments, and that's kind of what we're digging down into. That third party is assessing that external system and making sure that the same security level that you're at, right? So when you get audited, a lot of times out of 10, they're gonna review your third-party vendors too. So once again, on external, you see right there, conduct an organizational assessment risk prior to the acquisition or outsourcing of information. So once again, before you use that service, you need to run a risk assessment, probably compliance scan, and now a privacy scan. And we know at the bottom, processing storage locations should be in the United States. The new terminology is United States jurisdiction. I'm still saying CONUS, which is continental United States. So, and when we went to NIST 800R5, I think they went to United States jurisdiction. Restricted geographic location of information processing, data storage to facilities located within the legal jurisdictions and boundaries of the United States, right? So that's huge things in the federal space. Can you use Reg AI to look for regulatory documents and ask QA like ChatGPT and upload local documents? That is an excellent question. Just because I'm super cautious, I would say I would say no. I would upload documents to ChatGPT. I would upload your standard NIST, your standard FedRAMP, and anything you uploaded from your company. I will redact out, all the company names and stuff. So I would do it from that standpoint. So I was actually thinking about doing some videos because if you upload your NIST documentation, which 9 times out of 10 it already has, but like you said, upload your local documents, then upload the documents you wanted to do a QA to for compliance. Once again, for NIST or CMC, you can actually have ChatGPT do it. Like I said, I don't think I would do it, or if I would do it, I would, just still go over it. No, you're right. There are public documents, right? In this 800 for R5. That's an excellent question. I need to think about that. I have it generate out NIST and IRS documents at a high level. Then I go in and customize them and overlay them. If you redacted it, I would have it assist in the due diligence. So now I think, as long as you redacted the company's documents or the agency's documents. Where is my? Let me find. Develop configuration management. Require the developer of the system components, and service to perform configuration management. Document, manage, and control the integrity of changes to the configuration items. Right. So you should have configuration management with all your items in it, even if it's infrastructure as code. I know B2B has a lot of programming modules, programming packages, database packages. So how do you get those into a version control, right? Then inside your version control, you would have configuration management. In the old times, we would call it release management. But now you check stuff on a branch, you can automatically build stuff and put it in production. I think Facebook does automatic production builds. I think they say they do 4 a day. To me, that's risky because I want to, which I'm sure they're putting them somewhere and testing them, but I probably want to have a manual deploy process. But Things are getting, quicker, velocity, and tools are getting better. Other things you need in there: implement only organization approved changes to the system or service, document approved changes to the system or service, and the potential security privacy impact. So when track security flaws and flaws resolution in the system components and report findings to a designated official. So when you do a new feature, a new function in there, you do a new code, new database, we need to review that for security impacts. Are you doing some kind of new authentication? Are you using a new service? Are you using to the cloud? We need to figure out once again that security impact. Then once again, what's the privacy impact? Is it right to know, right to delete? Are you letting them get too many items? Right, so now their privacy is not as tight as it should, right? Because you can let businesses get too many data elements on a person. They're not going to use for a potential business. So what does that look like once again when you acquire software? Put in your configuration management. You want to have those stuff in, and every now and then you're going to have a security issue that came with a new functionality. So how do you document? How do you make sure it's taken care of? Yeah, I'll check that out. So yeah, I've been doing a little, like I said, a little chat GPT. I haven't, really been uploading the documentation and let it read it. I've been doing it so long. I try to get my process, but you're right. I think, especially when you go for a bigger company, how can you get your velocity up for your compliances to make them better, especially with so many people getting hacked out there too, also. Developers testing and evaluation. Require developer system and components at all post-design stages of the lifecycle. Develop and implement plan for ongoing security and privacy assessment. We were just talking about that. Perform system testing and evaluation of all post-design phases of your SDLC. So when you design your new phase, you have your automated testing. Once you design and you get ready to put it in production, once again, how do you do your security and privacy assessment? What's in QA? How do you scan for vulnerabilities in that new design phase? How do you look for privacy assessments? All right, what are you looking for? And I got some sheets coming at the end, what I'll look for now in privacy, trying to loop that more into the security and risk assessment and what that should look like. Produce evidence of the execution of assessment plan and the results of testing. Implement a verifiable flaw remediation process. Correct flaws identified during test and evaluation. So, in part of your testing, you're going to come up with bugs and flaws. So, you find a bug, you document the bug, right? You put it in Jira. That bug should get fixed with a bug number. Then that bug should get tested, right? So when the auditor comes on, all that information should be in Jira. All those CIs, configuration items, codes you fixed, configuration items you update. You have to update software. All that should be in the process and documented, because that's really what the auditor is going to look at is how did you correct flaws? How did you test them? How do you evaluate them? So hopefully, those type of flaws won't happen again, right? You want to get better. So I think this is the last one. Require the developer of the system or system services to produce a design specification and privacy architect. It's consistent with the organization security and privacy architect. Accurately complete and describe security, privacy, and functionality. Express how individual and security functions, mechanisms, and services work together to provide security and privacy capabilities, right? So there should be defensive depth in your security. So how does that layer on top of each other? And once again, how do you make it, get stronger? So you've seen it. We went over the majority of those. I'll put the link in there if anybody wants to come up. We're getting a late night with PBO, kind of chilling today. Um, so let's look at a few things I put in there to talk about how would you handle those issues and look at them. So when you do a procurement, right, RFI, RP, you buy software, Risk assessment. What's your data classification, right? I always classify the data before I know, so I know what to do with it when I got it, right? So there's some of the common classifications to that data. It's public data that may be freely disclosed to the public. Internal only. Internal data not meant for public disclosure. Cars, sales playbook, organizational chart. Confidential data, sensitive data that if compromised would negatively impact operations. Contract with vendors, employee reviews. What is restricted, highly sensitive corporate data that if compromised could put the organization in financial or legal risk. Uh, PII, credit card information, social security numbers, PHI, protected health information, right? So those are some of the data classifications. Because once I get the data classification, then I know what level of security we need, what level of privacy we need, right? And what level of architectural design do we need. Here's another data classification: confidential, integrity, and availability. That tells you those levels. You see it, the FISMA definition and the FIPS 199 definition. So we're going to do a FIPS 199 video coming up. Once again, the low, moderate, highs, different ways you can classify the data. You see it right there. Low has a limited adverse effect on organizational operations. Moderate impact could be expected to have a serious adverse effect on the organization. High, expect to have a severe or catastrophic effect on the organization. So once again, different levels of data classification. DPA is a data processing agreement. That's basically is a contract and is agreement between a data controller, a company, and a data processor, such as a third-party service provider. Regulates any personal data process conducted for a business person. The DPA may also be called a GDPR data processing agreement. Data processed include operation in which data is collected, translated, communicated, or classified to produce meaningful information. Right. So once again, when you do federal work, you got to have some kind of agreement between you and the vendor. What is that, and how is that going to work? All right, especially when you're talking about third-party assessments and what that should look like. So let's keep rolling. Like I said, this is short. Vendor risk assessments, and what things are you going to ask that vendor? Vendor risk assessment, you see it there. Reviewing security documentation, their policy and procedures, their response plan and continuity. Data handling and protection, their data classification, how they handle data, and their breach notification. Their security controls, enforcing strong password policies, MFA, network systems, physical security. Compliance and legal, if they have GDPR requirements or CCPA, which is California requirements, legal operations, third-party agreements. Risk analysis and mitigation, identify risk including potential unauthorized access to data, service disruptions, and data breaches. Documentation and contract agreements, we were looking at above the DPA. So those some things from a vendor risk assessment I will be looking for. And if you're doing one, what you should be looking for is go through your list. And hopefully, we're going to automate some of this coming in the future. Then the privacy standpoint, what were we looking for? You see it on the left, data minimization, right to know. Consent is real big, right? Organization must obtain valid consent for the collection and processing of personal data. Individuals have the right to withdraw their consent at any time. So if we're looking at a third party, we're looking at us handling privacy. We want to make sure our consent is there. Data access and portability. Individuals have the right to access their personal data and receive it in a commonly used format. Data accuracy, data security. What's their breach notification? They have a right to delete, especially CCPA. California residents has the right to request that organization delete their personal information. I think that's more in California now, right? And I think NIST is kind of drilling down into those data segments too. right to opt out. California residents has the right to opt out of the sale of their personal information. So if you're selling people's data or making money from them, you need to give them the ability to once again opt out, or you could be in problems, with your security, and if you had a if you get audited by, especially from a federal breach, that will probably come up. So that's kind of what we hit today. So I'm going to leave it on the screen. I'll drop the link if anybody wants to come up. Like I said, I just want to hit a few things late night with PBO, trying to make them a little quicker. Shout out to that. Definitely have to go come in check on cams with the chat deep seek. Like I said, I've been doing a little chat GBT. I need to dig in that a little deeper because we all know AI is the future. Hell, AI is now. Once again, drop them any questions you have in the chat. I want to thank everybody joining me. Shout out to Big Cam. I might have to go have lunch with him. PBL don't like to leave the house very much anymore, but I might have to get out. Shout out to my man Before the Billions. Hopefully he's safe in Atlanta. We know that Atlanta ATL don't know nothing about that snow. Shout out to Regine. We had a great conversation today. She reached out. We chopped it up a little bit. Shout out to my man Abdul. Shout out to Justin. Shout out to Ty. We chopped it up a little bit too. He reached out. So you can reach out to me on Discord. You can reach out to me on professorblack@gmail.com. I've been kind of slacking on my email. My apologies. I've been working on this course. I'm trying to get it done. So that's kind of been taking my focus away. I got to do a little better. But if you reach out to me, PBO definitely going to try to get back with you. Shout out to Space Tacos. Oh, my man Before the Billing said he's coming up. So I'm going to wait on him. Shout out to him. Shout out to GRC Mafia, GRC Nerdhead. Definitely go check out Space Tacos Discord. I'll be in there checking out the labs, doing a few things, trying to work on my lab game a little bit. Everybody's looking for the labs and the hands-on, so that's kind of what I'm working on. When I do my course, got to get some labs going on, my man. Up. What's up Before the Billions?
Hey, what's up, PBO? How are you doing?
And I'm doing all right, man. Trying to stay warm. It's -1 in the Midwest, but we ain't had no more snow for a minute though.
Oh man, it is crazy over here, man. I got stuck in the snow.
Yeah, y'all know about that, man. You better get that. You need to get that 3 days working from home, man. You need to tell them that you get your remote on, man, so you can. It's too dangerous out there.
hmm Yeah, man. I wanted to come up right quick, just to kind of come on and give my opinion on what you were talking about,
Of course,
PBO. Yeah.
you
So
doing it for real. So yeah, this is you. We
yeah,
had a lot of development stuff in there today. What chime on in there? We had some development stuff in there today.
yeah, man. Speaking of development, man, I'm over here working with large amounts of data,
Mhm.
trying to like troubleshoot some things for work. And man, when I tell you, there are so many different like challenges that you may face that you have to be able to like solve the problem for. But it's fun, man. I love it. Love doing that.
Yeah, when I started working with big data, some stuff it took me a while to figure that out. I can run some with 1,000 records, but when you try to run 1 billion, I was popping memory one time. I didn't have enough memory in my box. So yeah, when you work with big data, like you said, other challenges pop up than just processing the data, just the sheer size. And we were trying to do one big commit in Oracle, so we were trying to use up one big memory block to commit 1 billion records. That wouldn't happen on a relational database. So
Oh
yeah,
man.
so
Then
it's different.
right. Then you got to like I was dealing with some firewall issues and
Mm,
stuff. You got to work with your security team, and
facts.
that can take a while because you got to put in the request. But I mean, like all of that is useful to avoid people getting access to the wrong things.
Yeah, but
And then
we need to make it easier though, so we're not hurting development, man. So that's what
yeah,
we try to make sure that process is, kind of tight, right? So you put it in, because I mean we did something. We used to take 2 weeks to do some security validation. That was just way too long,
hmm yeah. Sometimes I can kind of get like bogged down with a whole bunch of different requests. I'm like, man, it took me like a week to do something. I was like, man, I had this big production issue come up, and then this other issue came up. It just kind of just took up a lot of time, and it's like a lower priority thing. But then it's like another team; they don't know what you got going on. So
and
I
and that's
completely understand that.
and that's always the thing I try to tell the security team is it could be a low priority up for us, but it could be number one for somebody else, right? So trying to get everybody on the same page. We're like, oh yeah, but then
Like
we
this is QA or something like that.
yeah, but what I hate what we used to do is we would tell people they need to get it in early and these are the process. But sometimes stuff comes up, and people need to move quick. You can't be like, oh no, you put it in the day, we're gonna do that. It's the 21st. Oh yeah, we're gonna do that February the 2nd. That's when we do security reviews. I'm like, man, we can't be doing that, man. Because a lot of times, especially on a firewall change, a DoD, that's an infrastructure change. It affects everybody in the building, man. So they be having these integrated team meetings. I'm like, man, we gonna never get this shit in production. So what does that look like? So they were like, well, what's a firewall change? Long story short, somebody broke something 5 years ago and blamed it on the firewall. So now they got to go through this big, all the teams got to look at it, because really the firewall affects everybody because it's one big firewall, right? So it was crazy, man. So yeah, we got to figure out how to automate that up and get our velocity up. So
hmm Yeah, man. Have you ever had it to where like, let's say something? I'll just go ahead and get like the scenario.
hmm
A team didn't let us know that something was paused or was failing, and
hmm
it was failing for like several months, and then we were missing hundreds of thousands of records because this process wasn't working. And
hmm
then now, okay, now we gotta backfill all this data,
hmm
hundreds of thousands of rows.
So what we did is, yeah, we had that affected is we need to have visibility into their architecture, their
Mm-hmm.
logs. So we don't need to change it, but we need to do logs. So we start putting stuff where we can see viewing other people logs, but
Mm-hmm.
it gets kind of tricky when you're dealing with federal data because it's need to know. I'm not on a project, but your project messing my project up, right? So we start putting stuff in logs, and we can start putting alerts in other people's stuff to kind of alert us when stuff happens. But
Yeah.
but we had to do traceability because you should know if you put, if you had 1 million and when you only, 500,000 comes in, you should have a reconciliation process to help you know. Hey, we put 1 million in when we looked at our data mart or our data lake, only 500,000 showed up. What the hell happened? So we start putting a lot of reconciliation stuff in there to help us to happen, right? Because a lot of times if there's 1 million in there, before you start rolling up, the details should be 1 million, and maybe you start rolling them up on some kind of, group code or project code. But the details in there, you had 1 million in the lake, it should be 1 million in the store. So we start doing a ton of reconciliation to help us with that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I think we need to.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, man, it is there are so there is a big systems, like how you say,
Mm-hmm.
big systems working on big problems.
Big money too, man. Because
Big money, man.
we were paying people, and we like, oh shit, why we 2 million off? Then the only reason we kind of figured out because we was reconciling on money. So we put them over there. We're like, well, damn, we 2 million short. My boss was like, well, we gotta figure out. So that's how we know the other processing. Well, we had it was long story short, it was GL. We were posting into the general ledger, and some of the posting was erroring. And that's why our
hmm
records went over there. So when we counted the money up, we counted money up on our side. The one side, we reconcile the number of records and the dollar amounts in the check. So we're like, well, shit, we 2 million off. right? So that's where that reconciliation, because we're dealing with money on ours, so that's one reason it started getting real. So yeah, you got to reconcile that on their end and your end, so you can trace that transaction all the way through the process. But then it
Yeah,
gets kind of, people get, they don't want you to dig into their system. They don't want you to look at it. So now you start stepping on people's toes. So, that's a whole nother kind of issue over there.
yeah, like that data governance.
Yep, facts, facts, facts.
Yeah, PBO.
But yeah, you got to get your reconciliation together. Shout out to Mildred. I think it was -18 here. I don't go outside long. Facts. I'm with you. It was negative. Well, I think it's -1 here. Yeah, I went and got me some tacos from the taco truck, and that was about it, man. That's about as much as I left the house, man. Yeah, I'm trying to be
Yeah,
safe out there, man.
it's gonna be 13 to tomorrow morning.
Shout out to my man Mike V. I gotta apologize. I was supposed to show up with my panel on the Black Brain Trust. PBO overslept. He getting old. I tried to take a nap. I'm supposed to be up at 10, and I woke up about 10:45. Shout out to the Black Brain Trust. Definitely go subscribe to my man. I'll be over there. He got me thinking about doing some stuff on the continent. Talking about African privacy, though. I want to give my man a public apologies to Mike V and the Black Brain Trust. PBO getting old. He almost 60. Go ahead, B. Go ahead, B to B.
Man, my dad the same age, man.
I'm 57, but I'm almost there, man. I'm getting up there, man.
Yeah, my dad 56, about to be
I'm,
57.
I'm right there, man. I'll be 56, 58 this year. I got to calculate them. I'm getting old. I'm losing track, man. I'm losing track. So, yeah, facts, man. I'm
Hey,
getting
man,
up
that's a
there.
blessing, man.
Yeah, I can't complain, man. I'm in decent health, man. I was up walking on the treadmill with the old people at lunch, man. So I'm trying to get it in, But now, real quick, but system service acquisition, when you acquire software, you need to do your security review, your privacy review. Shout out to my man Chris Whitlock. They did a privacy stream today. So, my man Mike V showed up. What's up, Mike? Oh, let me get him on here. What's up, Mike? How you doing?
Hey, peace, bro. Peace, man. Thanks for having me up, man. I'm good, man. Yourself?
Oh, I can't complain. My bad. I want to give you a public apology. I'm getting old.
No, it's all good, man. It's all good, man. We kind of figured that as well. We waited for you, but it's all good, man.
I
Before the
appreciate it.
man, it's nice to meet you as well.
Nice to meet you as well.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. This is my kind of talk, man. I like this type of stuff, man. I work in half of the cyber risk section as well now. Managing all the compliance and vulnerabilities as well as doing cloud third party assessments for cloud providers as well. So working on the SaaS and PaaS side.
Oh yeah, that's the hidden gem now, because everybody going to cloud, but ain't nobody doing risk assessments. We in the cloud, we good. That's incorrect. You got to do a risk assessment.
Oh
But
no, man, that has to go all through a enterprise architectural review, and then you got
yeah,
to do a risk assessment as well, and then you got to start doing you know the research as well to make sure it's compatible with the environment. So enterprise architectural reviews and then technical architectural reviews. Nothing gets onboarded without going through all that. But I don't want to interrupt you for going through all
no, no, you good. No, that was good input, and I was gonna chime off for that. Is you work for a mature company? I see small companies, man. They just letting you do anything you want. Ain't none of that in there. So I'm trying to get people. But you already know, Mike, when you do federal work or big systems, those are stuff you need to talk about. Like you say, enterprise architecture. You see it right there. SA enterprise engineering principles, and you see SA 17 security, privacy, architecture, and design. You want to make sure it fits what you're trying to do, or you can configure it to make sure it fits what you're doing. I think a lot of companies are missing that piece, to be honest, Mike.
Well, to your point about smaller companies, I think after this year, I think that that's going to come to an end with the recent cybersecurity guidelines. I think even if you're a small company, you won't be able to get away with just doing whatever you want without having some accountability there. Especially if you get dinged on a breach and they start to review all of your practices and they see that you've been lacking in those areas, you're going to get dinged pretty hard. In Massachusetts, it's $50 for every record that you lose. And so if you lose a million records, you're like Equifax, you're pretty much out of business.
Yeah, this young dude said something to me, confused me, Mike, and it was brilliant, but it made me frown up. Young guy, we was out there. He said, "Yeah, man, I got 5 million records of small company." He said, "If my company's only worth $2 million. So if I got hacked, I'm not reporting it. I'm like, what do you mean you're not reporting? He said, they're going to have to come find me because I'm going to be out of business anyway. I had to scratch my head. I was like, I understand what he said. I didn't like it, but I did understand what he was saying. So
Yeah, I think what they're going to start forcing CISOs to do as well is start holding CISSPs or some form of certification before they can even call themselves CISOs, right? It's kind of like a master electrician without going through their notable hours, before they get to a journeyman and whatnot. So you can't call yourself that without holding some form of certification. So I think that there's some discussion going on right now about that. So.
I looked at what you were saying when that video when you saying that, and I kind of like it and I don't like it. I think it's true, but then are we gatekeeping? Are we saying you got to have a certification or degree to get in the industry? So I don't know, Mike. I was kind of wavering on that a little bit. Chime in
Oh,
on
oh,
that.
oh no, I'm not saying that. I think the insurance providers who
Oh
have
yeah,
who do cyber insurance are going to
right,
say how many
right.
people on your team are holding certifications. Because I remember when I used to work for Dell, and I used to work with other vendors. HP, don't touch our servers without Server Plus.
Facts.
Verizon, don't touch our networks without Network Plus or CCNA or something like that. They were very strict about that. They did not want you touching any of their services and their hardware without having some form of certification. So I think that we're moving in that direction.
Especially with cybersecurity, like you said, because they got to put some form of requirements on there because that's risk, and they got to put some risk to figure out how much to charge you on cybersecurity. So,
Right.
especially in cybersecurity, insurance is expensive as hell too now. So with all the breaches, so um,
Yeah, definitely.
no, that
Yeah.
makes you. You want to
There's no,
chime in on that B2B? Chime in on that.
I'm like, I always heard a saying, there's no way that you can stop from being hacked because there's companies that are hacked right now, don't even know it yet.
Hmm.
No, that's true, but
And
I
a lot of
think
it's come from the inside.
yeah, too, but I think I hate this term. I don't think companies are doing basic hygiene, so they're making it easy for people to hack. Like Mike said, is I don't think people are doing basic stuff because they don't have the basic knowledge and basic certification. So,
Mhm.
like there for Snowflake got Ticketmaster. Well, let me rephrase that. Tick
Ticketmaster got
Ticketmaster got Snowflake. They didn't even put MFA on their database. So
Mhm.
Snowflake was like, "That's not us. They're negligent. We put in their documentation, big as shit. You got to put MFA on." But they didn't force them to put it on. So Congress was like, "You should make them put it on." Ticketmaster's like, they're a Fortune 500 company. Chime in on
Yep.
that, Mike. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that I think if you have a developers database, you may not put those MFA on there because it's not necessarily production, right? But when it comes to production, that should have been sought out by somebody up top, whether it was an architect or it went through an audit. Somebody had to be auditing something. I mean, I run scripts all night, come back in the morning, I can see what the results are and what failed and what didn't pass. And so
Mm-hmm.
if you got Ticketmaster, a big multi-million-dollar company that says that, either we didn't have the resources, we didn't have the, human capital at the time, or where was the oversight for all of this? It's because that's a human error. That's not necessarily a technical error. That's just a human error. Somebody just didn't do their due diligence. And that's exactly what ended up happening, is that it came back to bite them later. And so I think with some of the new systems, like when you're talking about AWS or you're talking about Azure or something like that, when you run a compliance scan, that will show up in the report that you did not have MFA or you did not have something on the network is amiss, because you got to have a golden image to start with before you start doing deployments. And if you have a golden image and you're doing a deployment and it still shows up as clear, even though it's not, it passes a compliance scan, something's wrong there. And so I don't know all the technical details as to what happened there, but you and I know that if that came across our desk, that's getting pushed back. I'm not signing my name on that for
Facts,
Yep.
nothing.
facts.
Right.
Matter of fact, I was working with Snowflake earlier, and they had a big pop up that came up that said in April they're forcing people. Well, I ain't gonna say forcing, but it's a requirement for you to have MFA
No, they
for
forcing.
production.
They're forcing
Right.
you. They forcing
Right.
you because what the and I which I push back on a lot of people. That wasn't a snowflake problem. That was a Ticketmaster problem. But what Congress said is snowflake. That's negligence. So you should force them to do MFA before you even let your database come in. And I push back. I'm like, hey, they a big company. They big boys. They should know what they're signing up for. So, but two is, are you feeling open or are you feeling closed? Right
Mhm.
from a thought. What's your thoughts on that, Mike?
No, I'm with you 100% on that. I know. I think that I think that I think a lot of times we're overwhelmed with a lot of work. I mean, you know the numbers. Cybersecurity professionals are some of the most sought out resources, human resources out here. So it's probably not uncommon that you may have a team that's like maybe 5 or 6 that you probably should be running 15, 20.
Yeah.
And that probably that lack of oversight, people working extended hours and things like that just happens. And so I think when it comes to MFA, I thought that was just a default thing. Maybe
Mm.
pre-pandemic you probably could have said, okay, maybe we can get away with this, but post-pandemic, nah, I don't think that would be the case. And so when you're using AWS, that is kind of one of the checkpoints when you
Mm.
start rolling out a deployment, that mf do you have MFA? That shows up. I don't know about Azure. I can't remember what Azure, but I do know that if you have the necessary um, guardrails in place, that would show up at some point. Whether you're talking about compliance scan or some other vulnerability scan or uh, some kind of network scan, something would have showed up that, hey, you're lacking. You have some visibility gaps here. You need to pay attention to. And so I'd like to know, if I was doing the audit, I'd like to know who's responsible for that. Why was it like this? Who designed it this way? Where was let me see your topology for your technical architecture. You know, well, I'll give you an example. I was working at a company, I think a year or so ago, maybe a couple years ago, and they the people who are in charge now had no idea what came before, because the people who designed it are no longer there.
Yeah.
And there was no notes taken as to why it was designed this way. And so they inherited all this tech debt, and no one had a good explanation. And so now you need to bring people on to actually help cover these things. But you and I know, Prof, that you hate to take on somebody else's work when you don't know what they were doing before, and you don't want to be responsible for it, because it's broken by design.
Yeah.
They broke it. So
Yeah. It's brittle on that. Then two is, and I'm a little more. You scared to do anything because you scared you're gonna break it because you didn't design it, right? So yeah, that gets tricky.
yeah,
But I tell people that's when you need a good dev area and a good QA area, and you need to hopefully you have test coverage. So when you change something, you can run some automated tests. But I took over stuff. I'm like, dude, yeah, automated test wasn't good. You don't have a QA area. So now you're trying to build all this stuff on the fly while you're trying to learn the app. But
and you probably have a deadline that you have to meet. In healthcare, your enrollment time is between
mhm,
October 31st and January 1st. And so
yeah,
you can't do anything. You can't do any code changes,
yeah,
nothing. All that stuff stays frozen until January. And so what are you going to
yeah.
do? And so these are some of the challenges, different sectors of different industries, they just play by different set of rules. And so I think if you're like a mom and pop shop, you can get away with some things. But when you start moving up into the majors,
Oh
especially
yeah.
when you start talking about government, they do things a certain way. If you don't play by those rules, you're out.
Oh yeah. And like you said, those rules, which there for a reason. As you get older, you like them, but man,
Mhm.
it sometimes it hurts your creativity, hurts your velocity. Like you said, you locked down for 3 months. I was at DOD. They would say thing. It was like 4 months. You couldn't touch a system unless you got like signed off at the top level because they want to do nothing with the infrastructure. You could break some on a network, and so they didn't want any agency doing anything for like 4 months, which was crazy to us.
Well, or you may run into an issue like with CrowdStrike where you have no control over that code development, right? And so a
Right.
new update comes down, it breaks, environment is offline. You don't have a good explanation to leadership as to what's going on here because you didn't make any changes, you know.
Oh yeah, you be scrambling. You be scrambling. Nah, facts, facts.
Yeah, right, right.
So,
So,
but that should be, which we never really talk about in the industry because it doesn't happen a lot. But when it happens, man, you be like really struggling trying to figure out how to roll it back. Then a lot of times you just trying to figure out CloudStrike. What do you want us to do? Right? You kind of waiting on them because you're not gonna fail over a whole enterprise that right. So you kind of really got to wait on them.
or you would have to stipulate in your contractual agreements on what you're willing to accept. If there's going to be any sort of changes, I need to know this before we deploy it in our environment. Whether it's coming from the internal or it's coming from a vendor, and that vendor risk assessment is going to help you understand all of this.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were getting lazy because they were so big. I think they just automatically took that. But like you said, us even in our Microsoft patches, a lot of times we put that in test for 2 weeks, run our automated test, and we got like 10% of the org is going to test what those patches are before we roll them out to the larger org. When I was at DoD, right? So, like you said, how do you want to do configuration management? How you want to test it, and what's your infrastructure set up to take those updates?
Create a sandbox, put it, in the cloud, and have it only point forward out to the public, make it public facing. It's not going to be internal to the environment, so you can run all your testing right in that sandbox. Just spin
Hmm.
it up inside of a VM. So,
Yeah, especially if you got a lot of custom code, because like you said, one small change, it looks good, but it breaks your code because you might need to update whatever you run, your ASP.NET or whatever. You might need to update part of your framework as a part of that update to the OS. So
or it could be something as a Python library that is out of step,
yeah.
with your requirements. And so, before the billions, I don't want to cut you off. I just want to let you guys rock out. So,
Oh no, I was just gonna add on. Like, there's so many different small things that could disrupt,
Mhm.
even just like the connection that you may have. Like, you can have a password that can just expire, and then all of a sudden now this whole application doesn't work.
We should be
You know,
using keys, but we'll talk about that later, B2B.
you know what?
We should
We
be using
should
keys.
be
But I
right.
feel you.
We should be, but
A lot of
yeah,
people use
well,
hard
passwords.
coded and stuff like that.
Oh, now
Yeah.
my heart's hurting, B2B. I'm gonna have to give you a finding. I'm gonna have to go ahead, Mike. I'm gonna have to give you a finding for that. Go ahead.
oh
It
no, I
depends
was
on
just
the
gonna
team,
say,
right? Mm.
yeah, I was just gonna say privilege access management too, right? And so
Yeah.
that may change. That password may change every 30 days or whatever time it changes. But what happens when it doesn't replicate back up, and that password that needed to change from 30 days ago that you were using is no longer changing because the system has failed when it does automatic password change. Now
Yeah.
you're trapped.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So we were talking about that too. Is get out of hard code and passwords. AWS has their security wallet, and I think they can automatically change your passwords to sync them up. I've never done it, but that's some of the stuff I want to look at 2025 from a security purple team. What's the security on the application should look like, right? Because B2B trying to do passwords, I got to get him over the keys so we won't have to be worried about the
Well,
passwords.
that should
You
be
know
tied
what?
on to your IAM, right?
Right, 100%,
Yeah,
Yep.
because
100%.
without giving it away, because I've used like AWS Secrets Manager,
Yep, yep.
and but then they'll have it where they have hard coded stuff, and you have to go into Secret Manager and then edit the the key or the password in Secrets Manager.
But you can make it automatically rotate though in
Yeah.
Secrets
Oh man,
Manager.
I'm new to Secrets Manager. That's why
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
like, I need to
I'll send you
try
a
and see if I can
video.
do something like that.
Yeah, I did a video on it. Yeah, but that's that. Like you said, that's in secrets managers. Then they got parameter managers that you can do secrets inside parameter managers. So depending on what you're using and how you want to use it, there's a couple ways to do it. But I think secrets managers it's a little pricier compared to parameters manager. But I don't think
Mhm.
parameter managers does that automatic password and key rotation for you, like secret managers. But yeah, that's built in as secrets managers, B2B.
Yeah, man. Does it connect to GitHub?
It can.
Okay.
I don't think I've done it yet, but I like Mike said, I'm pretty sure it can. AWS tries to make it easier. Anything that's major like that, AWS, because developers love it, so all that stuff is kind of built in. GitHub, people were putting secrets inside GitHub though for a minute. I was like, come on, developers, why y'all putting secrets inside GitHub?
Yeah, that's code
Right.
control. Yeah, that's code control.
Yeah, so they weren't handling it right. So GitHub actually put part of their application now looks for those secrets because so many people were putting it in there. Then they were blaming GitHub. GitHub was like Snowflake, like, dude, that's not our fault. But
Yeah,
they got
they have
yeah,
things like Git Guardian that
yep,
checks your GitHub for secrets.
yeah, because they were getting dinged. So many people were doing it.
Hmm.
So I'm like, man, now you gotta watch your developers. They putting your stuff in GitHub, not telling the org and not taking proper protection, precautions when they were doing it even. So that's a
Yeah.
whole different security check.
Well,
Like
that's
with
happening even with AI as well, right? So they're
Hmm.
actually, you know, um, putting all their code inside whatever repository that they determine, and lo and behold, you got proprietary business code inside, some repository somewhere that no one knows. It, these sort of controls, man, still matter. Everybody thinks
Oh,
that AI is the magic bullet, but they find out the hard way that yeah, that floated off to Russia somewhere.
yep, yep. A lot of people
hmm
don't realize that because they're using you training AI with your custom code that they're giving to other people now. We like that. Let's show it to somebody else, right? So
Hmm.
yeah, people don't realize that part is governance. What does that look like?
That's SA20, right? SA20, SA17.
Yep. Yep. To critical components and right security and privacy architecture. And that's the one thing I've been trying to do a little better on. Shout out to my man Chris Whitlock in the chat. He probably went to bed. Is getting better in the privacy. I usually do security. I usually go to risk. I'm really just dipping my toe in the privacy, especially with CCPA and GDPR. What does that look like, and what questions do I need to ask from a third party risk assessment for privacy? I don't really. What's your thoughts on that, Mike? I'm just really getting into that privacy piece a little better.
I think with privacy, there are some predefined
Mm-hmm.
questions that you can pull down. I know that um, CSA, the Cloud Security Alliance, has some pretty good predefined questions on their site.
Mm-hmm.
You can pull down as well. CIS has some pretty good findings as well for that. And so I think with privacy, it's either it is compliant or it's not, right? And so,
Yeah.
is it PII? Is it business? Is it BPI? Business proprietary information? Is it
Yeah, man.
is it anything sensitive? That we need to know? Because I usually have like a battery of 120 questions,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
then I have to compress it down because you know they either don't answer it all or they don't answer it on time, and then it clock. We're way past the clock, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
I try to narrow it down to just maybe 20 questions. But in regards to privacy, yeah, it's either they have proprietary information or sensitive information, or they don't.
No, true. And I got a couple on there. We talk about right to know. Consent is a big one
Hmm.
that they consent to using their data. Um, right to delete. So like you said, I'm putting a few more questions in there. And my questionnaires are stuff I look at when I do a third party assessment. So especially with CCPA, New York DFR, uh, for their financial services. So they're, like you said, compliances are digging a little. Even this, they came out with their PI security family, which is real big on privacy. So just trying to get a little, I guess, better in that area. You got anything B2B? I'm getting tired. I'm gonna go to bed. You got old people going to bed. You got anything for the billions before I shut it on down?
Yeah, man. PB, I just want to thank you for having me up here.
Always, man.
Um, and when we talk about like development work and security, I mean it goes hand in hand.
Hmm.
You should essentially have it to where you couldn't even like merge your pull request if you don't have like some sort of firewall in place,
Mm-hmm.
and or like something like Git Guardian, like how we said, to check for secrets. Make sure that you're not like hard coding things and putting it
Nah.
in. So
Yeah.
those are some things that I would think would make it harder for the bad guys to get to.
Yep.
But
Yep.
especially if you don't know what you're doing, like you would need to like be somebody who has a database administrator experience or like a role in order to even know where to look for these types of information.
Yeah. But
So
two is a lot of time when you check in code, we should be doing compliance scans and vulnerability scans, to pre help the developer before they even put it into production. So part of that pipeline, what should that look like from security, privacy, governance, and just basic vulnerability scan, static scan and dynamic scan. When you checking in QA, we should be scanning for that stuff, compliance, running our test bank, and in that test bank should be some security validation in there too. And I think we're a little light on that in a lot of places. So,
Yeah, dev, test, stage, prod.
yep, yep,
That's essentially the process, and so that stuff should have been picked up by the time it got to staging. In development, you don't really care, but once you got to staging, into before it goes to deployment, I mean to production, then that should be picked up. I'm
mhm.
okay with things failing, on a development stage, but once you get to production, it's just like, okay, what are we doing here? Let's go back.
right,
But to your
Sure.
point, privacy not necessarily always taken into consideration. I think
hmm
that privacy has always been assumed that
hmm
we're doing best practices in privacy, but we haven't really necessarily tested those measures. And so
Thanks.
I think maybe you are on something, that when it comes to privacy, I think we do need to either come up with something, like a module in service now or something like that, to kind of ask these questions. Maybe open up if we open up a task or a ticket or something like that, and we assign it to the stakeholder, let them answer those necessary questions that you have on screen, and then that we can all be on the same page and has
Yeah,
complete transparency
yeah,
within the organization, to say, yeah, I assigned it to PBO. PBO answered it based on these based on these factors, and then we can tie that same ticket number right in with the deployment
yeah.
as we take the next step. So
Yeah, and like you said, I'm trying to figure out how to, because I think in the past I just assumed it was secure and I got the risk. Privacy was taken care of, but I think now with GDPR and CCPA, they're pulling those out little bit with a little more detail. So,
Mhm.
mhm.
what does that look like? I appreciate both of y'all for coming up, man,
Yes,
and
sir.
definitely have to do a panel, invite everybody on there, and hopefully I can make it and don't fall asleep early. I appreciate both of y'all, man. Have a good night. Appreciate everybody for joining me.
Thank you, man. Hey,
Appreciate
B,
you.
Thanks.
Thank
B
you.
to B, it was nice meeting you, brother.
Pleasure as well, Mike. Thank you so
Yes, sir.
much.
All right, man.